Hey guys, welcome back to All Things Graft. In today's video, I'm going to try and explain why as a merchant or a business owner, it's important to consider accepting cryptocurrencies as a form of payment within your business, and how Graft makes it possible without having to learn any new skills or adapt to any new technology. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the past few months, chances are you probably know someone that has invested some money into cryptocurrencies. Maybe you've even purchased some yourself. Unfortunately, though, the majority of people holding cryptocurrencies at the moment don't really fully understand what they are, let alone why they exist. In order to understand how important or how valuable cryptocurrencies are, we first need to understand what a currency is and how it's created. A currency is simply a medium of exchange, and it could be anything that could be used in exchange for goods or services. Gold and silver, for example, were used as a form of currency for a very long time, but now we use what's called fiat currency. Most countries, with the exception of the European Union, have their own type of fiat currency. The US, for example, has the dollar, England has the pound sterling, China has the Chinese yuan, and Japan has the Japanese yen. Now, every country's currency is created in pretty much the same way, but let's take a look at how the US creates its currency, the dollar, and explore the differences between fiat currency and cryptocurrencies. There are two ways in which currency is created in the United States. The first is fractional reserve banking. Now, don't let these fancy words scare you. All fractional reserve banking means is that banks are allowed to issue loans with depositors' money, the depositors being you and I, and are only required to hold a very small amount of our money in reserve. This is usually only about 10%. Let's look at an example so we can understand this a little bit better. Suppose you have $1,000 on you and you decide to take that to the bank. As soon as you hand your $1,000 over to the bank, because of fractional reserve banking, your bank is allowed to find a borrower and loan out up to 90% of your total deposit, or up to $900. Now let's say your bank found a borrower and it lent them those $900. If you were to go back to your bank and ask them what your balance was after they made that loan, your bank would say your balance is still $1,000 and it's available for you to withdraw at any time. What this means is that when you make a deposit of $1,000 into a bank and the bank loans out 90% of it, that bank has just literally lent out $900 of brand new money into existence. Now, what happens with that $900 that was lent out by your bank? Well, the person who borrowed that $900 would now take that to his bank, and his bank would now be able to lend out up to 90% of that, or $810. This process continues on, and by the end, the original $1,000 has now become a grand total of $10,000. Because of fractional reserve banking, banks have the power to create new money each and every time a new deposit is made. Have you ever wondered why every time you go into a bank where you don't have an account, the employees are always pressuring you to open one up and deposit some new money? Well, this is why. Now let's take a look at the second way in which money is created. Suppose the US government wants to start a new program which requires it to spend money it doesn't have. Well, the government will have to issue treasury bonds. Treasury bonds are simply pieces of paper that the government issues out stating that they borrowed some money which they promise to pay back in the future with interest. Now, anyone is allowed to lend the government money, but can you guess who the biggest lenders are? That's right, it's the banks. They take our money, lend it to the government, and thanks to fractional reserve banking, more new money is created out of thin air. Now here's where things get very interesting. Let's say the US economy isn't doing so well, and the Federal Reserve, or the US Central Bank, wants to alleviate some of that government debt to help boost the economy. Well, all the Federal Reserve has to do is monetize the government debt. Now, monetizing the government debt is just a fancy way of saying we're going to take that government debt, the treasury bonds, and turn them into cash. Through a process called open market operations, the Federal Reserve takes the treasury bonds held by the banks and replaces them with US dollars. The banks can now take those brand new dollars, lend them out, and create even more new dollars. And can you guess where the Federal Reserve gets their money? From the same place other banks get their money when they make new loans, out of thin air. You see, when you and I write a check, there must be sufficient funds in our accounts to cover that check. But when the Federal Reserve writes a check, there is no bank deposit on which that check is drawn. When the Federal Reserve writes a check, it is creating new money. And don't let its name fool you. There is nothing federal about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is just another private bank with shareholders that hold stock and earn interest. And can you guess who those shareholders are? That's right, other banks. Our entire monetary system is controlled and run by banks, and only they have the power to create money. Money which we must work hard for and pay taxes on every day for the rest of our lives. That is the financial system that we are currently living in. Henry Ford once said, "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." We are born slaves to a system that forces us to take on more and more debt just to survive. Think about it. As more and more currency is created and pushed into the system, over time, things become more and more expensive because the value of that currency depreciates. This is called inflation, and it's increasing at a rapid rate. And since our wages will never increase at the rate at which currency is created, we are forced to go even more in debt just to pay for things like healthcare, education, taxes, and for some, even basic necessities like food and water. Our monetary system only works because it forces people to take on more debt, but there is one catch. As long as the majority of people don't default on their debt, this system will continue to function as designed. If, however, too many people are not able to pay back their loans, we'll get something similar to what happened back in 2008. In 2008, the entire world economy was at the brink of collapse. Banks had taken on too much risk by issuing mortgages or home loans to people that couldn't afford it. As more and more people took out mortgages to buy new homes, the value of the housing market began to rise. This led investment banks from around the world to make even riskier bets by investing in the rising market, and when people couldn't afford to pay back their loans, those investments began to fail. The risk taken by the banks was so great that it began forcing some of them to go bankrupt. Because our financial system is based on debt and is so interconnected, the failure of these banks would ultimately have led to the failure of other banks. If this were to have continued, the entire world economy would have collapsed. What happened instead was the US government, along with other nations, decided to bail out these banks. Now this, of course, was necessary because there was no other financial system in place that could have replaced the current one if a collapse were to have occurred. That is, until the following year, when a new financial system was born as a result of this mess. In 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto published a white paper entitled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. In it, Satoshi describes Bitcoin as a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash that would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Bitcoin, along with other cryptocurrencies, are designed to be used as a type of virtual cash that eliminates the need for banks, which charge high fees and take a cut of every single transaction that is ever processed. Cryptocurrencies are a new type of financial system that eliminates the need for us to pay high banking fees, take the power of creating money away from the banks, and allows people to free themselves from a financial system that only benefits the rich. Now, the next logical question is, well, if cryptocurrencies take the power of creating money away from the banks, who is it giving it to? Surely it must be giving it to some other type of organization. Well, here's the beauty of cryptocurrencies. Almost all cryptocurrencies are decentralized. This means there's no central entity that controls each cryptocurrency's entire network. Cryptocurrencies are simply computer programs that use a very advanced form of mathematics called cryptography, hence the name cryptocurrency. There is no central entity that gets to decide when more of its currency can be created, because once a cryptocurrency program is launched, it will continue to run as designed. If a change in the program is required, all participants of the network must agree on the change before the change can be implemented. If the majority of the network doesn't agree on the new changes, then the program stays the same. Almost all cryptocurrencies have a maximum supply of coins that will ever be created. This means as more and more people learn about this new financial system and decide to opt into it, there will be a greater demand for cryptocurrencies, and they'll in turn grow in value. Now, why is all of this information important for merchants or business owners? Well, by choosing to accept cryptocurrencies through a platform such as Graft, you are opening your business up to a new financial system, which is gaining more and more popularity as time goes on. The cryptocurrency community is a very large community, and there's already lots of money involved. By choosing to accept cryptocurrencies as a form of payment, you are exposing your business to people who prefer transacting with cryptocurrencies instead of through the old financial system, and as for reasons previously stated, the list of people wanting to get out of the old system is growing larger by the day. Now let me tell you some of the benefits of accepting cryptocurrency payments through a platform such as Graft. First of all, Graft is a decentralized payment platform, which, like other cryptocurrency networks, runs on its own blockchain and has no central entity that controls the whole network. Graft is programmed to be a universal payment platform that can accept various forms of payments, including cryptocurrencies, debit cards, and credit cards. This is beneficial so that you don't have to juggle between devices that accept normal debit cards and credit cards and those that accept cryptocurrencies. Graft also offers the ability to receive payouts of different types, so you can accept a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and receive Litecoins instead, or vice versa. You can also receive payments in your local fiat currency, so if you live in the US, you can receive dollars, euros if you're living in Europe, or pounds if you're in England. Also, transaction fees on the Graft network are much lower when dealing with cryptocurrencies than those charged by traditional payment processors. With a traditional payment processor, your average estimated percentage fee is somewhere between 2 to 3.5% for every transaction they process. When accepting cryptocurrency payments with Graft, your transaction fees would be less than a fraction of that. And with cryptocurrency payments, you wouldn't have to wait up to 3 days to receive your funds like you would with a traditional payment processor. Transactions on the Graft network are authorized in seconds and confirmed within a few minutes, so you'll receive your preferred cryptocurrency of choice right away. Of course, you can always choose to trade any cryptocurrency you are holding for another, all within the Graft application, which can hold all different types of cryptocurrencies and even allows you to cash out of cryptocurrencies altogether and into your local fiat currency if you wish. Now here's something that will make your transition to accepting cryptocurrency payments a lot easier. Graft is being integrated with leading point-of-sale terminal providers, so you'll be able to accept cryptocurrency payments on a device you're already familiar with, or maybe perhaps already own. You won't have to learn any new skills or adopt any new technology. And because Graft is a decentralized payment network, you'll actually be able to participate and be a part of the Graft ecosystem, which would enable your business to make some extra revenue. Graft is more than just another payment platform. Graft is the bridge between the old financial system and the new, enabling us to transact between the two in a very convenient and easy way. I hope I've laid out some good reasons for you to consider accepting cryptocurrencies as a form of payment within your business. If you'd like to learn more about Graft, please visit their website at www.graft.network or contact the person who referred you to this video. If you came across this video on your own and would like more information, shoot me an email at allthingsgraft@yahoo.com so that I may help you get started. If you liked this video, please don't forget to hit the like button. Also, feel free to share it with anyone who you believe may benefit from this information. I plan on making a lot more Graft-related videos, as there's still a lot I have yet to discuss. Until next time though, this is All Things Graft, signing off.